Lori Sundberg. Let me tell you about Lori. She's the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer for Western Digital Corporation, leading key global human resource initiatives and people strategies. She has over 20 years of experience in developing and aligning HR strategy with business needs. This is one impressive woman because prior to Western Digital, she served as an HR leader at a couple names I think you've heard of. Jacobs, Arizona Public Services Company, and American Express. Now, I just want you to know when she comes up here that we did not plan the colors in our shirts, but we were kindred spirits immediately. We were in the same, we're like, okay, this is good. In 2018, she was named, get this, 50 most powerful women in technology by the National Diversity Council for her various contributions to the technology field and deep HR expertise. I always want to hear, and I always ask all of our speakers, is there something about you that's not on this bio? And I got a really nice story. She's married to her high school sweetheart, and she calls him her BFF. Let's come alive with Lori Sundberg, our keynote.
Thank you. Julie, that was so nice. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. And it is my honor and pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon after a busy day. I also want to thank the Witty founders, Carolyn and David Layton. This is a phenomenal conference, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak to such a great gathering of impressive and exceptional women. And on behalf of Western Digital, I want to say that we're really pleased to be a major sponsor of this 25th annual conference. It is our pleasure and honor. I agree. So at Western Digital, we understand the importance of Witty and its global network of smart and talented women like all of you. Women like you do so much for your companies. Let's see. Yes. You keep them going, and at the same time, you're vitally important to your families and to your communities. So, ladies of Witty, good afternoon. Is it not? All right. So, by a show of hands, how many of you are proud to be working in technology at this time of cutting-edge innovation? I know I am. And how many of you have beaten the odds or overcome your fears to get where you are today? I know I have. And how many of you are here today to feel empowered and find new sources of inspiration? I hope you've had a great day of that. So, let's see. Wouldn't you know it? My clicker is not working. Oh. Sorry, it's working here, but not here. Okay, so a favorite quote, sorry, I clicked too far now, I gotta go back. There we go. All right, a favorite quote of mine is, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Is fear holding you back? Is it getting in your way? What I love about conferences like this one is that these conferences create a forum. They're a forum where we can come together as a group of women to support each other and to help one another and to inspire each other and to help each of us identify what might be holding us back, to identify our fears and push past them to greater levels of achievement and success. So I love the themes for this conference, the themes of inspiration, innovation, and inclusion. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about each one of these important themes. So let's start with inspiration. There we go. Now we're on track. Thank you, guys. I love music. Music is a real source of passion and inspiration for me. And one of the songs that really fires me up is the song that they played when I was taking the stage. It's the song Come Alive from the movie Greatest Showman. Anybody besides me a Greatest Showman fan? Sometimes in the mornings you can see me pedaling on the exercise bike, and I love it when those songs come on. So that's a song, the Come Alive in particular is a song about dreaming. And as the song says, it's about dreaming with your eyes wide open. And I love the concept of that. It's about overcoming your fears and beating the odds. And as the lyrics say, come alive, light your light, and let it burn so bright. And that's what each of you do each and every day. And at this conference, you're taking a moment to light that light or reignite that light. And you'll be able to leverage that for some time to come. So let me talk about some other sources of inspiration. Predominantly the people around me. It probably won't be a surprise to you that as an HR professional, I draw passion from and energy from people. And there's a lot of people who've been amazing inspirations to me, including my family, my team members, and the many passionate and dedicated employees of Western Digital, just to name a few. But let's start with an early source of inspiration, my mom. So my mom's the mom of 5 girls, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She taught me the value, and I'm the oldest, by the way. She taught me the value of hard work, and she always challenged me to be my best. She never complained about the amount of work it took to take care of all of us. And as the oldest, I had a lot of responsibilities around the house. And guess what? Because she didn't complain, I didn't complain either. And from the time I was little, I realized I really like to work, actually. I loved helping my mom take care of my sisters. And I liked then, and I still like now, getting things done. My parents taught me to have a great work ethic, and that's still a big part of who I am and what's helped me be successful over the years. So I always knew I wanted to go to college. Education was really important in my family. And as you just heard, my husband and I got married when we were both 18, so we were really young. And I don't necessarily recommend that, but it's worked out okay for me. And together, as a young couple, we made college a priority. It was important to both of us. And we both worked full-time while attending school. And around my sophomore year in college, I decided to pursue a business major. And when it came time to specialize within the business program, it was the people side of the business that most appealed to me. And so I chose organizational behavior as my emphasis. And that was the start of a very rewarding career centered around helping people and organizations accomplish bigger and better things. Let's see, I think I missed a section. So this is my mom and my sisters, who are also, these women are powerhouses, and they are also a huge source of inspiration for me. Today, I have this is my career. We won't talk about that. Today, I have a family of my own. I have 3 adopted boys. They're biological brothers that I adopted when they were 5, 4, and 2, after 18 years of being married with no kids. In 6 months, let me just talk, so part of this message today is about overcoming your fears. And when my husband and I decided to adopt, we were looking for a baby. And we were talking to a children's home who was about a baby, and they came back and they asked us if we were interested in adopting a sibling group. And my first question was, how big's a group? As it turned out, there were these beautiful boys, ages 5, 4, and 2. Was I scared? That wasn't what I went into the situation thinking I was going to do. My husband and I had a lot of conversations about that, and you bet it was a scary thing to adopt 3 boys, 2 of whom who could talk to you and tell you what they liked and didn't like right from the get-go. 6 months after we took the boys into our home, before our adoption was even finalized, after 18 years of trying to have a baby, I found out I was pregnant besides. So the little guy with the driving certificate is 16, and he is, I always say he arrived the old-fashioned way. So we went from 0 to 4 boys in about 12 months. All the while both my husband and I were working full-time in successful careers. And today, as you can see from the slide, my boys are 22, 21, 20, and 16. And my boys really challenge me. Any of you have kids here? Your kids challenge you? And my boys are another important source of inspiration. For those of you who just raised your hand that you're raising children as well, that in and of itself is no small thing, as you know. Each of you, in your own way, is changing the world in probably lots of different ways, but in particular through how you're raising your children. Those of you who are raising girls, which I was raised in a girl-only family, but I am not raising girls, but I am sure you're teaching them, as my parents taught me, to be strong and to know their worth. As a mom of boys, I'm teaching my boys to respect women and to treat them fully as their equals. And my boys, because they have a working mom who's the breadwinner in the family, for them, their mom is the working parent, and their mom and dad share household responsibilities fully. My boys want equal pay for men and women. In fact, when we have these conversations at home around the dinner table, they ask me, "Mom, why not?" And I agree, why not? That's the way it should be. I agree. So our children have a fresh view and a different set of expectations as they enter the workforce. And through them, and what we teach them each and every day, through them, we are changing the world. Throughout my career, my team members have also been an important source of inspiration and challenge in a positive way, and sometimes otherwise. Now, to be effective, we have to surround ourselves with great people, and I'm fortunate to have a terrific team at Western Digital of talented HR leaders, and they provide a strong source of inspiration to me each and every day. And a lot of what I've learned over the years has come from truly inspirational and diverse leaders who have been great role models for me. For example, when I was working my way through college, I worked for an entrepreneurial restaurant organization that was owned and run by a gentleman named Johnny Williams. And he was a gay restaurateur, an entrepreneur, and he saw talent and potential in me and gave me my first opportunity while I was still in college to move from the restaurants into the main offices where I had a chance to work in the field of human resources when I worked for his company while attending college. When I worked for American Express, it was my second job out of college, I worked for an African-American woman, one of my early leaders, and her name was Althea DeBrule. She is a courageous leader and super creative, and she was fabulous at identifying and nurturing talent and unleashing people's potential. And I hope I've taken a few of those pieces from her. And Pam Arway. Pam was one of the top female executives at American Express when I worked with her as her HR business partner. She's a strong, smart executive who could really stand her own in a predominantly male environment. And she really understood how to get the best out of her team and really challenged us to be fantastic leaders, business leaders, as well as people leaders. I've also had the privilege of working with for some extraordinary CEOs. One in particular is Ken Chenault, and he's the recently retired African-American CEO of American Express. I was at American Express working directly for the head of HR when we had the CEO transition from Harvey Golub to Ken Chenault, and I had the opportunity to work on a culture-related project directly with Ken. He was an incredibly authentic leader, and he had an amazing way of connecting with people and demonstrating real empathy, which he demonstrated constantly and continually, but particularly in the days following 9/11, where American Express's main headquarters is in downtown New York, directly across the street from what then was the World Trade Center. And when the buildings fell, it took out a big chunk of the American Express building, and all of our employees had to be evacuated that day, and they were not back in that building for probably 9 or 10 months after that date. And we also had 11 employees who worked in one of the World Trade Center buildings as well, and we lost those 11 employees through that event. And he was an amazing and inspirational and empathetic leader through that very challenging time for the company. And of course, at Western Digital, I have a fabulous CEO, Steve Milligan. I watch him as he listens and works to really understand and get the true pulse of the organization. And he leads from a very personal and authentic place. And I learn from that. I'm inspired, and I've learned from each of these people and many, many more. And I'm sure you've got these similar leadership role models in your life, and I encourage you to learn from them. I encourage you to seek out opportunities to work for smart people and strong leaders, people who are doing innovative things, people who will challenge you to be your best. Their excellence rubs off, and it can stick to you in ways that will help you come alive and feel empowered to do amazing things yourself. Whether it was the inspiration from my mom or from Ken Chenault or other leaders that I've worked with, I've always gravitated throughout my career to projects that were particularly complex and challenging. In fact, early in my career, I sort of established a reputation for raising my hand and stepping up to work on some of the tougher challenges. As an example, when I was 32 and working for American Express, I was asked to lead a global $26 million HR systems project for American Express. And by the way, at the time, I'd never actually even logged on to our HR system. So it was, I was well connected throughout the organization, and I was particularly skilled at process improvement. And so it was those capabilities I was able to leverage. This was a project where we were asked to bring 56 countries in international onto a single HR technology platform. And we were given the challenge to complete this project within 18 months. At a time when I was doing the benchmarking and other companies were taking the shortest period of time I could find for a similar type of project was 4 years. So an 18-month timeline was pretty daunting. Was I afraid? Yes, I was. But despite those fears, I pushed through and said yes to this important leadership opportunity that I consider one of the foundational development experiences of my career, and one of the key pivotal moments that I feel really helped me most prepare for the role I have today. I spent the next 2 years traveling the world 3 weeks out of every 4, so it was a good thing this was before kids. But we got the project done, and I learned so many things along the way. So let's see. There we go. So I know all of you can also accomplish amazing things if you surround yourself with great people, people that inspire you to tackle and overcome your fears. And as the song says, step into the light and dream, but don't dream with your eyes closed. Dream with your eyes wide open. Remember, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Now let's talk about innovation. Innovation is important at Western Digital, as I'm sure it is at many of the organizations you work for. And it's something I'm personally passionate about. I know a lot of people talk about being innovative, but what does that really mean? For me, innovation comes in lots of shapes and sizes. There's what I call big innovation. Those are some of the revolutionary shifts, like the smartphone or maybe a self-driving car. These types of innovations reshape the world as we know it. But there's lots of smaller innovations. Innovations in how we work to be more effective and productive. Innovations in how we approve a process or implement a program. And both big and small innovations are vitally important to our organizations. In the HR systems project I mentioned previously, the project team, to get it done in that period of time, the project team came up with a really innovative way of implementing that system in each country in a series of rolling waves. It was a very creative approach, and once the build was complete, that approach allowed us to move through the implementation from start to finish in about 8 months, which is something that at the time I don't think had ever been done before. Women in particular are great innovators. Every one of you has the potential to be a fabulous innovator. A study published in Science Daily, which surveyed research and development teams at more than 4,000 companies, found that gender diversity dynamics led to what they call radical innovation. The research showed how the addition of women to an innovative team causes a paradigm shift through the introduction of new features and results in the emergence of completely new markets. Additionally, the Stanford Social Innovation Review reported that women consistently score as well or better than men in the ability to innovate in particular, or related competencies, and particular competencies such as championing change. So there you have it, ladies. We've got to embrace our power. Yeah. So I'm happy to share that Western Digital has its own innovation magic. And our most recent product is a product called EB, which is a smart photo manager that allows someone to collect, organize, and privately share photos with your favorite people. EB wasn't created in a snap of a finger. It came about over time through a series of ideas by a team that led us to create a new vision for connected consumer content. I'm proud to say that the team that developed EB included several women who made important contributions. Women like Daria Derkach in engineering and Sharmila Moore as the program manager, Fawn Zhang, who led our user interface work, and Barbara Nelson, our growth products executive, who pushed the team to capitalize on this important opportunity. Our team understood that some consumers want an alternative to social media sites that let everyone see the pictures that you post. And if you're like me, sometimes you want to share those memories with only a select few, or only people particularly who are most important to you. Sometimes that requires a private network. So the team built EB's core user experience around private photo sharing, and they created a core feature called the Inner Circle. So we've taken the popular concept of sharing photos via social media and expanded that opportunity. Now that's what I think of as innovation. I hope you entered the raffle earlier because some of you are going to have an opportunity to win a new EB in just a few minutes. And finally, let's talk about inclusion. I believe that inclusion is actually at the heart of driving innovation. At Western Digital, we believe in the value that women have to offer, women in particular, and we're working hard to provide a workplace where women are fully included in all aspects of our company. We have 2 fantastic women on our board of directors, and we have women who serve in critical leadership roles in finance, legal, marketing, and yes, even in engineering. And we're proud to say our chief data scientist is a woman. I'll be honest, we at Western Digital still have a lot of work to do, but we're on the road to parity for women, and we are committed. We're committed to continue these efforts because we believe that these efforts and our women are a vital part of our ability to compete successfully and succeed as a company. This is our diversity statement at Western Digital. You can see it there on the monitor. And I want to emphasize one sentence that's particularly important to me around the concept of inclusion. We believe that the fusion of various perspectives, and I'll add, including women's perspectives, results in the best outcomes for our employees, our company, our customers, and the world around us. We are committed to an inclusive environment where every individual can thrive through a sense of belonging, respect, and contribution. I'm really proud at Western Digital that we are committed to creating an environment where everyone, including our women, can thrive. I like to call that a culture of belonging, and I encourage each of you to play a role to help create a similar culture inside your organizations. As women, we can't rely on others to do those things for us. We must take control of our own destinies. And as the song says, we must come alive. So as I conclude, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you not to settle. I want to challenge you to step up, to raise your hand for opportunities, and not be afraid to take those risks, either personally or professionally. I'd like you to make a pledge to come alive and do something bold. It can be anything you want it to be. It can be something personal or professional. But whatever it is, it should be a pledge about something that until now you've been afraid to commit to, afraid to try. So ladies, remember to dream, and dream with your eyes wide open. And don't be afraid to stretch and challenge yourselves. Come alive and let your light burn bright, and you will continue to do amazing things. Thank you.
Can I ask everyone to stand up? And let's honor Lori and her phenomenal keynote by making the pledge. Right here, right now. Repeat after me. I pledge to come alive. And do something bold. Now look at someone and say it. Look at someone near you and tell each other. Take turns. I pledge to come alive and do something bold. High five. Yeah. So a couple of women, actually I see them right now, came up to me earlier. Hi, putting you on the spot. Came up to me earlier and they were asking about the imposter syndrome. And how do we confront it? How do we, as women leaders, address the imposter syndrome? And I think that there was so much in Lori's presentation about stepping out, transcending through fear. And sometimes we override ourselves and we push through and we take risks. And I think Lori really shared that we need to step up in leadership, get to the other side of fear, be innovative, and create companies with a sense of belonging where we infusion of ideas. One of my mentors, Mike Caslin, used to say to me, he'd look at me, and so I want to repeat this, square in the face when I was 21 years old and joined a nonprofit teaching entrepreneurship to inner city youth. And I was kind of shaking in my shoes at that time. And he said that he was leaving to go work nationally, and I had to run the Boston region. And he looked at me and he goes, leaders lead, so lead. So that EB is pretty cool. It's really cool. I think that worked really well for my family. But there's a surprise for someone in the room. So if I could ask my friend Tammy Sanders to come on up here. Get ready for a giveaway of the newest Western Digital product. Evie, are you ready to win?
Let's get the product. It's hot here. 265-024. Nope, we're gonna go fast. Oh, we got it, Woo! Congratulations.
Okay, we want a full report on this tomorrow. So we all can go on, I saw it on Amazon, and where else can we buy it?
On the Western Digital website.
Of course. So
Okay, I'll go to the next one. 265-085. 265-085. Ready? Keep going. Oh, we got it. You guys gotta be loud. I thought you come in line today. Woo! Here we go. Nice. One more. Got one more.
congratulations.
Okay, 265-093. Yay! Thank you. So I'm going to have you guys come up to the stage, and then we're going to get.
Thank you, Tammy. Congratulations, ladies. Well, these Western Digital people really know how to treat an audience with inspiration and really cool EBs. Now it's time to bring up and talk with our Hall of Fame honorees. Please welcome to the stage our moderator. But let me tell you about him, Roger Crockett. I love these words. He is a fierce advocate for advancing women in leadership. He is responsible for leading diversity and inclusion, and we've all learned the word belonging initiatives across Western Digital's global footprint of nearly 65,000 employees. Prior to Western Digital, Roger was a senior partner at a D&I training and consulting firm, Inquest Consulting. He worked with clients such as Federal Express and the Illinois Institute of Technology to enhance diversity awareness and build a culture of inclusive leadership. He covered the technology industry for Business Week magazine, where he wrote about companies such as Apple and Motorola. A native of Silicon Valley, he can tell you where the good restaurants are. Please, let's give a warm, witty welcome to Roger. And as he's coming up, by the way, he met his wife skiing in Sun Valley. It's a really cute story. Ask him about it.
Thank you. So, Julie, thank you very much. Congratulations to the EB winners. Such cool technology. I am so totally jealous. I don't have an EB. Lori, we have to get ourselves. We got ourselves some EBs. And let's give it up. Speaking of Lori, let's give it up one time for our people leader, Lori Sundberg. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of outstanding leaders, and Lori Sundberg is as smart as they come, so you're all very fortunate to hear from her this afternoon. So good afternoon, ladies of Witty. I'm really thrilled to be here with you this afternoon, and you might be wondering, what's this dude doing up here for this panel of these Hall of Fame women? It has something to do with the fact, really, that Western Digital, I don't know if you know this, but 60% of our employees at Western Digital are women. And we are, as a company, we are committed to our women and their development. And as the leader of diversity and inclusion, at Western Digital, I too am very committed to you all, to women. It's very important for our company and for me. And I've also, just on the personal front, been very fortunate to witness the phenomenal power and ability of women. I was born to a woman who I think was absolutely phenomenal. My mother was the principal. I don't know how many of you are from San Jose, but she was the principal of Willow Glen High School here in San Jose. My wife, also another phenomenal woman, is a successful supply chain executive handling a multi-million-dollar budget on an annual basis. And again, I work with some extraordinary women who are here with us today. So that's why Julie said, and why I believe I'm a fierce advocate for women. The way I like to put it is, you've all heard of Dr. Martin Luther King. He called himself a drum major for justice. And so I like to borrow that phrase because I know of the amazing talent that women have, but I also know the tremendous hurdles that they face, the inequities that they face. And as a result, I like to think of myself as a drum major for gender equality. Any opportunity, thank you, any opportunity I get to advocate for women, I take that. And so that's why, again, I'm privileged to be here this afternoon. So now I have the distinct privilege of leading us in a conversation with this year's Hall of Fame inductees. Now, I'm only going to share just a little snippet from their very impressive bios. Many of you were here during their induction lunch, and so you heard extensively about who they are. But I want to share a little bit of background about them and give you some little personal insight into what makes them tick. So I'm going to sort of introduce them and then actually have them come up as a group as we sit down to have the conversation. I'll start with Heather Hinton, who is the IBM Distinguished Engineer and an IBM Master Inventor. But she is also, as an engineer, she's struggled with the fact that her brain is so process oriented. How many of you are engineers in the room? Wow, not quite as many as I thought. But you all know some engineers, right? So you know how they think. Well, she has worked hard to get beyond that, and the way she does it is to focus on art and creativity. So she does quilting, actually, colorful quilting and painting in order to sort of push her brain beyond that real regimented type of thinking. And I'm sure you'll see a little bit of that when she's on stage. Julia Liuson is the corporate vice president of Microsoft Developer Division. And she's caught the travel bug. She has traveled all over the world, but there are some places she's yet to get to. Actually, she says a lot of places she's yet to get to, and she's determined to. These are her bucket list places. One of them is Antarctica, another one is Tibet, and another one I just learned about today, and I can't wait to go, is Galapagos. Yeah, the Galapagos Islands, which is down near Ecuador, and she showed me a picture of it. It is absolutely fabulous looking. So maybe we all go and have a party in Galapagos. Sara Rushinek is a professor of business technology and health informatics at the University of Miami Business School. And so she's down there chilling in South Florida. And so you know what she does? Normally, many of us go. I spent many years in Chicago, so I would go to Florida for a vacation. What Sara does for vacation is go to CES in Las Vegas for vacation. She's totally psyched about CES. And she goes particularly to the emerging tech floor. And as she says, that is her joy. Enough said. Natalia Trayanova is the Murray B. Sachs Professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Johns Hopkins University and a Professor of Medicine at Johns Hopkins as well. And Natalia is an avid hiker. She has hiked in the Himalayas. She has climbed Mount Fuji. Clearly, I know, she likes the challenges. She says she likes the freedom of being up there in the clouds, looking out over the world. Fascinating stuff. And finally, before we welcome all to the stage, Blanca Trevino is the president and CEO of Softtek, and she's in the technology industry. She started Softtek back in 1982. She's been in the industry for quite some time, but she says she's never really been, as she calls it, a nerd or techie person. She actually, as a young girl, grew up as a fan of fiction, but not the literary giants like Tolstoy. Rather, this is her quote, rather the cheesy, dripping honey, ridiculous love novels that you get at supermarkets. And why? Because she says it would transport her to places that went against the grain of her expected efficient self. It taught her to dream. Lori talked about dreaming earlier. It taught Blanca to dream, and that dreaming led her to start a business, Softtek. Some phenomenal women. Let's all give them a warm, witty welcome. Yeah, just however you like. Just, so I'm told, yeah.
Start by saying that we already took the pledge that they offer, and we want to do something bold because you invited us to do that, right? So
And we take our pledges seriously.
we do.
We do.
And also the time, right?
What time is it?
It's-
I'm from Miami, and at 4:51, it's what? Happy hour time.
So we decided not to have different, right? It's bold. You invited us to be bold. So we wanted to be bold.
Absolutely.
And we could share with you, but you don't have glasses, but we could do that later.
I love
Yes,
all.
we have
So,
Okay.
so anybody
Roger,
who's
we didn't
wondering-
know if you wanted to take the chance or to take the pledge.
So we decided just the women would be indulging.
No, but we can share with you.
You mean I can miss out?
Let me start.
We'll
So
get you
ladies-
another cup here.
This is the most important part. At the end of the day, you want a bottle that will not put up a fight.
So as they are pouring and indulging,
Roger,
No,
we'll
we got
start
it.
with you.
We got it here.
This has
No,
come
we
as
haven't.
a bit of a surprise
Roger.
to me.
We allowed to do that. Do not be concerned. Peggy and Carly will understand that. So we need two more.
Right here.
This
Yeah,
side.
right.
But I will tell you this, if anyone was wondering why I wanted to moderate this panel,
Now you know. Let me give that.
Pass it down.
Thank you.
so to Witty,
Wait a minute, wait. We need two more. We're not drinking. Good thing we got two bottles.
I think we all have.
No, we do have another bottle. Don't worry. You can be generous.
Right. So let's do a toast.
Right.
We want to do a toast to all of you, to women, to what women can do, to us bringing together a better world, inclusive, and to our happiness as researchers, technology people. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for honoring us. Cheers.
Cheers. L'chaim.
Cheers.
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 Salud.
I wanted to bring tequila, but it was that could have been bold. Tequila could have been bold, so it's better having.
We take the first step of boldness,
Yes.
then afterwards we'll go on.
So thank you, Roger. Thank you for allowing us
We
to
are
do that.
listening.
Thank you, Roger.
I'm not sure I had much choice, but you were
And we were bold enough to tell you, we're telling you this, but we're not taking no.
Yes.
So we'll get into the panel. before the drinking gets too heavy. I wanted to start with a basic question, but an important one. What's an accomplishment that you are most proud of? What's an accomplishment that you're most proud of? So Blanca, why don't you start?
That's easy. That's very easy because from a personal perspective, I keep saying that being a grandmother, but more than being a grandmother, looking at my daughter being a mother. That's absolutely something that I feel very, very proud. But from a professional perspective, I have to say that whenever I go and visit the different operations that we have in other countries, seeing that we have been able to have that culture all over, the same culture. Because if you go to India or if you go to China or Brazil, you'll feel the same thing. So I am proud about having built this company, but even prouder when you see that no matter where you go, you'll feel that Softtek culture. That gives me a lot of pride, and certainly working with all those women and girls that are involved in this.
Great. Now, Natalia, how about you? I know you're passionate about this.
My biggest achievement was in 2013. I'm in academia, so in academia we all write grants. If you guys don't know that, our salaries are not fully paid by the university. We have to bring them. And as a medical sort of engineer, I have to bring funds from NIH. And so in 2013, I decided to do a bold step, which had a zero chance in my mind of succeeding. And that was, I wrote what's called an application for a Pioneer Award. So Pioneer Award is the most prestigious award that NIH bestows on anything. There are only 10 given each year, and they are in any field that NIH supports, anything. Anyway, so I wrote this, and it's just a manifesto, like a vision. So I wrote it, and then I got selected to be a finalist. And then I was told I had to give a presentation. And I thought, well, I speak well, I can go there and tell them what I'm doing. And I just shared this moment with somebody, and he said, oh yeah, somebody in our university won that. They hired Steve Jobs' team to do his presentation. And so I had to drop everything, and for 2 weeks, only prepare, and I won it. I was actually the number one. So this changed my career dramatically because NIH gave me $4.1 million with no strings attached, completely. And so all what you saw today stems from that, the fact that I was given, it's called money for high-risk, high-reward research. And all that enabled me to move all these technologies to the clinic and be able to now work on clinical problems. So that's my...
Well, so that leads me to another question that's sort of connected, and that is, how do you really motivate yourself when you're faced with challenge? How do you stay motivated? Certainly 4.1 million can be helpful. But aside from that, Heather, what things motivate you in the face of challenge?
It's the challenge itself. It's the fact that somebody thinks that this is hard, or that I can't do it, or that it can't be done, and it becomes this personal thing that I have to do in order to show you were wrong and I was right.
Prove them wrong. Sara, how about you?
I think when I face challenges, I kind of look deep inside. And in the beginning, I may even hesitate, but I think I pursue, and it comes from early on in my life. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and that basically that experience for me was, despite all the adversities you face in life, that you have yourself to depend on. So I think it's almost a way that I've embedded that no matter what adversity, you have the inner strength to overcome it. I think that's one of the issues that I have.
Yeah, powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
So, Julia, we need to hear from you. What about you?
Well, when I think about challenges, really depend on what kind of challenges you're working on. It's in the work environment, the thing that really motivated me is a couple of things. One is that I'm really determined to produce the product for our customers. So like that customer focus is a huge motivation both for me and for my team. The other thing that really motivates me is that I'm a believer in whatever doesn't kill you just makes you stronger. And so when you take a really big challenge, you was able to make small progress, and I'm a big believer in progress. And getting this sense of we celebrate small progresses as well. That's one of the cultures that we want to go build. Is that as we celebrate small progress, you're making, you get the sense you're cracking this problem, you're breaking it down, you're making progress, you're getting better and better at it. And that also builds a sense of confidence. And that kind of really get the team going and get me motivated. So there are definitely days where I look at challenges super daunting, and the only reason that kept me in there is that I was like, I cannot quit, that'll be way too windy. So, so I have to keep going. But to me, it's the customers and the motivation of the team.
Right, right. Well, clearly, all of you are extraordinary leaders, but you probably didn't start off as leaders. You had to climb and progress through your careers to get there. And we have many leaders in the room and others who are aspiring to be leaders themselves. So what are some of the strategies? Natalia, maybe you can share some strategies that you've learned that might help other women achieve the leadership ranks that they're shooting for.
To me, it is know what you want, ask for it, ask again, and never take no for an answer. That has been my driving force. I just ask all the time. I want that. Well, I ask again. And then I find another way to get there. I don't give up. I won't. Period.
It reminds me of something that Lori talked about. Just being sort of unafraid, right, to raise your hand and go after something. It's also a lesson that I learned early on in my career that, sometimes if you're not there, if you don't ask,
right.
You may not get the opportunity.
Really, so I went through a leadership course a long time ago, and the most influential thing was reading the book entitled Girls Don't Ask. I don't remember the author. It was awesome. And in it talks about how we are conditioned from children as we grow up to never ask. And actually reading this book changed my approach to life generally, and particularly to my career. So I got the Pioneer Award. I went to my dean and I said, I want 20% raise. And I stood there and he said, okay. And then I left. And then from there on, it went that way. Everything that I wanted, I've done it. And sometimes takes longer, sometimes it takes shorter.
Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please, Heather.
So I want to pass along something that I learned at Whitty probably 17 years ago. And on these lines, I was here early on. And it's a piece, it's a story, an anecdote, but it's something that I tell every single one of my proteges the first time I meet with them. And it was a story that was told by somebody in one of the coaching sessions. And she said she was a new manager, and she came into the office on Monday morning, and one of her male employees came running up to her and said, I really, really, really want to work abroad. Are there any positions abroad that I can have? And she said, no, go away. And the next Monday, he came running up and said, I really want to work abroad. Are there any positions abroad? And she said, no, go away. And this continued for an entire year. And then all of a sudden, boom, there was a position abroad. So she walked over to his office and said, there's a position abroad. Would you like it? And he said, yes. And two women in her department came up to her and said, well, why did you offer it to him and not us? And she said, I had no clue. You'd never told me. And so speak up, right? Ask, tell, remind, be a pain in the butt if that's what you have to do. But you have to own your voice and you have to speak up, because that's how you are going to get where you need to be.
Sara, chime in a little bit. Your thoughts.
you have to think about it as a solution. How am I going to solve the problem? And I tell an anecdote. I studied in Israel, and I work with a lot of startup nation companies, and they have an idea of the United States of being kind of, we just see it one way. And they worked in Seattle, and one of them came back and he says, a guy goes to a restaurant and he says, I want a cheese and ham sandwich. And the guy on the other side says, cheese and ham, we don't have a cheese and ham. And he kept on going, cheese and ham, we don't have that. And finally, you have the menus with pictures, and the guy said, that's the sandwich I want. And the guy says, oh, ham and cheese sandwich you want. And basically, you have to look at ways in which you can get around the area and say, okay, if I get, because sometimes when they say no to me and I say, again, no, it will be, here she's a pain in the butt, I'm not going to give it to her. So sometimes what you have to say, I want this as my goal, and find other avenues to get to it. And that's what I'm saying, that you have to be creative and innovative in your thinking, that it's not always that straight line. So think about it, that if that's not the case, you may then instead of the cheese and ham sandwich, you'll get the ham and cheese.
I completely agree with Sara, because as managers, and I don't know how many of you here are managers? You have quite a few. And I really think about what being a manager, if you have a report that asks you the same thing every week. I think that can get to this annoying point. So I am a big believer in being a self-advocacy. Like, you need to advocate for yourself. You need to make your aspiration well known by your manager and your manager's manager. And then so, you want to work with your manager, describe what your growth plan, like what your dreams are. Those are great conversations. Have them, maybe every 2 to 3 months. I would not recommend having it every week.
Right.
Because I think that's kind of maybe, to me, I would say that's kind of bordering on obnoxious. And everyone is busy. We don't want to have an obnoxious employee. Right. And I think another really big part about leadership is really about listening. And that is equally important. When you have a conversation, the listening part is also important. But when, if you ask for opportunity, maybe your manager said no to you. And have the following question: why? Who are you picking? Why not me? What are the skills I need? Really have that, have those lessons and those feedbacks sink in, because those are fantastic feedbacks that helps you grow. So definitely listen to what is going on. And the final advice I kind of have is that really try to go put yourself in your manager's shoes. And I advise this to my mentees all the time, particularly in corporate environment. That's very corporate. That's not going to go with academic at all. In corporate environment, once you kind of put yourself in your manager's shoe or in another team's perspective, you'll realize your perspective, your prioritization, what you think is important will actually change. So try to go pretend that you're in your manager's job. How would he or she prioritize? What is the things important to him and her? And if you don't know, ask the question. And that will actually get you another perspective about what is important. And those are critical things that help you grow, because you actually are working towards what is important to your organization and to your leadership team.
Wow.
And probably from a different perspective, I don't work in this universities or corporate. I'm lucky enough that
you make the decisions. You don't have to ask your boss.
No, but something that I truly believe is that it's so easy to make excuses. Oh, I didn't have that role because I didn't ask for it. Or in this company, they don't give those kind of opportunities. But it's important that you do not allow yourself to make excuses or to give explanations why you cannot do X, Y, Z. It is more related to, if in this company you're not getting the opportunity that you want, you always have the decision to move to another one. I think you have to take control, really control. You can ask, but even if you ask, they might not listen. Right. So be conscious that you can always make the final decision to say, if this is not the place for me to do it, then I can always move to another one. It's really not allowing yourself for no one to say no. Don't allow any don't make any excuses for you.
Thank you. That's a little good transition for us. Are we all family? Can we be real here? Can we really talk here? So sometimes in the workplace, right, as women, you're not always given the opportunities that you may
Right.
deserve. Can you talk a little bit about some of the times that maybe you were surprised and had to face adversarial relationships with men in the workplace that treated you, at least in your mind, unfairly, and how you overcame that?
I haven't, so I can't. Not bad. I'm always surprised when they support me, that it, from a positive perspective. I cannot say that I've been badly treated. So it's up to you to say, to give those.
Any different perspectives?
Yeah, I will share a story, and it's not a story about men treating women badly, right? And then, like, first of all, I've been in the tech industry for over 20 some years, and so I don't want to talk about what happened 20 years ago in the industry, et cetera, because those are not necessarily relevant to today. But today, one of the things we talk about a lot is unconscious bias, right? Everyone has heard that term. Yeah. And I really see it at play. And one of the very common unconscious bias is that women is not technical. Any technical woman would probably feel that. I'll tell you my story. This happened like even just a couple of years ago, and then I was already CVP for DevTools, and I went to go see an important financial customer in the East Coast area. And I went with my chief of staff, and she happened to be, she's a woman. My chief of staff at the time was a woman. And I also brought my one of my director, who is a man. And my director was sick, so he couldn't come. So it was just me and my chief of staff, 2 women. And then when account manager discovered, the account manager who's a Microsoft employee, discovered it was 2 women that's going to go talk to a panel of CIOs and CTOs in this financial company, he freaked out. So he was like, I have never met him. He was on the phone with me. He's like, oh my God. It's like, well, should we get John on the phone? And it was like, should we schedule a Skype meeting? They're going to ask really technical questions. And so my first instinct is roll my eyes. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I need to calm this guy. I need to calm him right down because I don't want him to be like completely freaked out when he went to see the customer. So I was like, I was the VP of engineering. I built this whole product line. I know exactly how it worked. And then, he also talked to my director. My director laughed at him and basically told him the same thing. So he calmed down, and then we went in, and then, we did a great presentation, obviously, and no problem from that. But the thing is that he could see my title. Like, he is a Microsoft employee. He can see my title. I'm CVP of developer tools. Yet, he still assumed that I may not be technical. And that really talked to me. I think that was such I was like an unbelievable experience that, even given all of the information, you would assume that he would not have the obvious unconscious bias. But in the moment that the unconscious bias kicked in. And so when I talk to a lot of people I mentor, it's like, it will happen to you. It's not you. It's nothing you can do to control the unconscious bias of these other people. You just have to ignore it. You have to ignore them. And then let your talent and expertise and speak for itself. And because after that experience, I'm sure he would have hopefully learned a lesson and not do this again, right? But sometimes I think that when this happens over and over and over in our career, it gets old, it gets tiring. But just keep reminding yourself, it's not you. It is the ignorant people out there. Right. And then we all have unconscious bias, right? So let's kind of go from there.
So Sara, what about from the academic perspective?
On the academic perspective, there's still pay inequity. I'll just speak here, I am the only tenured full professor, female in my department. I always tell everybody I'm your favorite tenured full professor, female. But I even see, even with when there were groups trying to get together, we announced it and they said, I think women faculty should get together. And I had comments from the male faculty, well, what's coming on here? Why are you meeting together? What's going on in this meeting? It was like going to be, this hidden revolt system here that was going to be under. So you see it, basically that bias that you see among those. But you see it also, I think it's up to us women to be more assertive. In some ways, you say to ignore it. I said we need to be stronger. So for instance, you'll see it, there's studies, and I've looked at it as well, on group conversation discussions. Men tend to interrupt women more. If women interrupt, oh, she's pushy. Sometimes it's done, but men haven't. But there's also a side where you say women need to be perfect. We need to know 100% before we'll take a job, or 120%. And then 25% is good enough. I can do it, right? Or 30 or 40 or 50. So I think we need to be more bold many times and do it. But on the flip side, we need to be prepared. We need to be educated, and we need to have the skills. And I don't want to be in a situation where we've seen it before, that when they look at it as you're the token or you're the one, that it's almost that assumption, because you're there, it may be because we needed to have a woman. And that's what we need to.
That's absolutely the worst.
You know, so we need to be prepared and do extra work in terms of being prepared. So it's flip side.
Thank you. Heather, do you have any comments about that?
I don't know, there was very well spoken. I think I want to, I guess, just echo the point that women feel that they have to be perfect before they will go forward for something. And that is just, your guy colleagues, your male colleagues, they're not doing that. So get over it. It really, you can look at a list and say, I'm 25. And if it makes you comfortable, you can go to 50% while they're still at 25. and then learn how to be good enough that you can make it through the other 50%. Because when somebody puts out that checklist, they really don't expect to get somebody who's 100% on that checklist. They really don't. They're hoping for 50, but they'll probably take 25, which is why that male gamble works.
Let me just build on that point. Actually, it's well researched that if you have a job description that has like 10 requirements, women will meet like 9 or 10 before they will apply. They think about those as minimal requirement. Men will be like, I got 3 or 4. That's good.
Or maybe I have 3 or 4.
Right. And so actually as a learning, so in Microsoft, one of the things we're trying to do is that when we write job descriptions, we're purposely trying to really trim it down to make it into the true minimal requirement. Because the more sort of like optional things you have, it's actually a gate to get more great candidates to apply.
Right.
So that's another thing that from a leadership perspective, what we can do to help encourage more women to apply. But at the same time, I think it's also the mindset of the women also have to change as well. So it's a combination that from both sides we're trying to make difference.
I think it gets to a theme that I actually haven't heard yet, which is just learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you are not uncomfortable, if you're not challenging yourself, you're probably in a situation where you're getting stale and you are not going to grow. So you need to, and you can't spend every day in a blind panic or terror. That's obviously not what we're saying. But if you are not challenging yourself every single day, you're not developing the skills that you need to progress.
Can I just do one comment? Someone just came to me and they got a job offer. They're in one company that's a very stable company, but you can see it's not growing. Another one that is really growing. And even when they got that other job offer, they come back to me and they say, you think I made the right decision? And it was that idea that, hey, how much are you going to grow here? How much are you going to learn? I don't even care if this other company gives you half the amount of money, which they were not, right? They were giving more, but it's the idea, how much more are you going to learn in this other company every day? And you tend to want to be, women take less risk. I'll tell you, I do algorithmic automated trading systems. Everybody knows what that is. It's basically the idea that the computer then will decide whether you should buy, whether you should sell. 90% of the trading market is done by computers. So we write algorithms, and together, when we do the algorithms, the guys just love it in terms of risk, and the females I see are really more reticent. We as individuals, maybe it's taking care of our young or something, we don't like the risk as much. And I think we have to kind of step up and go beyond that comfort zone and try more, to force ourselves to try more risk.
So, Sara, is the onus on women to step up, or
I think it's a combination. You know what I have control of is myself.
Yeah.
How you respond to me, I don't have that control. So I have that control, so it's up to me to be educated, it's up to me to be continuously learning, and it's up to me to get out there and to say what I want.
Right.
So I control those, right? And a lot of times I'm not in a position to change the environment, but I have to look at what areas can I control and then basically ask for it.
And I totally agree with you that, you know, you have to do what you can control.
Right.
I do believe, no surprise, that organizations have
Oh, right, for
a
sure.
responsibility to create
Oh,
environments that allow for
Right.
uh,
And
Remember.
you need to basically see what they're doing to give them opportunities to see it differently.
yeah.
You know, rather than be one against the other, basically in convincing what's the opportunity for the other side as well.
Yeah.
To give her a raise, what's the opportunity for her, whatever institution it is? And that is, they're going to have more prestige. They're going to be able to bring in more dollars. So I'm from the business school, so I always say the reason for technology, what are we doing? We're trying to increase our revenues or decrease our costs. And businesses are in, I don't even care if you're nonprofits or not, we're in the business to basically look at that aspect. And if you're proposing something, the way you have to look at it in terms of business, and that's, I think, an area where people even in tech don't think about business, but it's the area, whatever I'm proposing, will it increase these revenues? Will it decrease my cost? And even think about it basically intangible. Will it increase the reputation? If it increases the reputation, it will increase the revenues over time. So it's not just, let me see what I've done, how many dollars it will be, but those intangibles as well. So I think we as women have to make an argument for it.
Right, couldn't agree more. Let me ask, though, Natalia, to talk a little bit about, we know what happens, right, when
Yeah.
women are included, when we create an inclusive environment. Share, if you would, an anecdote or a story of that power of inclusion when you or other female colleagues around you were actually brought to the table and their contributions were respected and valued.
To me, inclusion is a very broad term. Inclusion is inclusion of race, gender, but nationality. But also another thing is very important to me. It's inclusion of diversity in expertise and diversity in opinions. Because if you want to embrace people who are different from you, you want to embrace people who can take a look at the problem from a very different perspective, and you want to have people who can give you an opinion that can be quite different from yours and point to vulnerabilities or other problems, that's the only way to go forward. You gotta embrace all that inclusion. So to me, inclusion is a very broad term. But down on the ground, I just love having a diverse team. Diverse team works so well. It is a warm environment. In my team, we are all computational scientists and engineers, but I have now clinical fellows who sit in my lab and do computer simulations, and then they go and treat people. So this is amazing to have that different perspective. But of the clinical fellows, one is African American. I have a postdoctoral fellow who's African Trinidadian. I have a girl. I have an African American girl. I have a Native American girl. Then I have a person from the Philippines. I have a person from Indonesia. I have a person from India. I have, of course, a person from China. I have a Filipino. I have a Romanian, and I'm Bulgarian American. So we're inclusion all over. Everything that we can include, any diversity matters. Even from the very basic, we have so many so good parties because everybody hooks very well to make different drinks. Inclusion makes life rich, makes workplace rich. So I'm all for inclusion.
Couldn't agree more, but beyond the parties, have you seen, you talked about diversity of opinion. You have this wealth, this breadth of phenomenal nationalities and genders. what results from that? Do you feel that the power of that different opinion?
Absolutely. I mean, it is like a family. What you learn in an environment like that if you are criticized, it's never personal. It isn't a criticism. It's just you take it as a different point of view. It's not a criticism. It's just somebody who points to a vulnerability of a problem, not because they think you are wrong or you don't know how to do your job, but because they want to move everybody together forward. And that's key. So to me, it is very important to build a team that understands that there is nothing personal in criticism, or I don't even want to call it a criticism, but pointing out potential vulnerabilities. You got to nurture that. You have to be able to make the point and point what you think is wrong, but then simultaneously in the next minute turn around and ask them about their personal life or something like that. There is nothing personal in this. Inclusion breeds inclusion. Inclusion breeds a wonderful environment in which everybody can be very helpful. I do not like people working in separate corners. I love collaboration within the team, and everybody takes from everybody, and we all go together like that. They're like my family.
Right.
I love working with that team.
Right. Heather, it looked like you had something you wanted to add.
Well, what I was going to say is that when done properly, when you have a truly inclusive environment, it becomes a safe space for brainstorming, right? Everybody gets to have their point of view, and everybody's point of view is respected. And, as Natalia was saying, the whole point of that kind of safe brainstorming is that everybody is rising together.
Exactly.
Everybody is improving the ideas. Everybody owns the ideas. There will always be the prime researcher, right? There will always be the lead developer, the chief architect, the SVP. So there's always somebody who kind of has to own it. But from a team point of view, everybody is working together. Sometimes it's magical, sometimes you have to work at it. But when it happens, when you get that kind of inclusive, everybody working together environment, it's magical what you can accomplish.
Yeah.
Because it becomes like a safe place where everybody gets to contribute equally.
And very often that's where innovation is.
And
born, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, can I add
Yes.
to that point? Because I completely agree. When we talk about inclusion, we talk about a sense of belonging, which is the same notion.
Yes.
And it's really about people feel safe.
Yep.
And then they can do their best work. And they can have a vigorous debate about a technical point. And then, but still be friends. And
Exactly.
that's
And
such
then
an
go out and
important
have a
notion.
beer afterwards.
Yeah,
Exactly. And then another notion that we talk about is inclusive design, which is the innovation point. Because when you have an inclusive culture, you want the product. We're all here to build product for us inclusive. And our product needs to be inclusive. So for example, in my product, Visual Studio is one of my products. And we spent, a couple of years ago, we spent, a number of months with lots of engineers working to improve the accessibility of the product. And in particular, we brought blind developers in to go test their use of the product and to really improve. So people with any abilities who has aspiration to learn to program, can actually learn to program. And we think about that being a super important cornerstone of being inclusive, having inclusive culture, as well as how do you actually have the team coming together and design inclusive product, which is the next level, which really the taking the inclusion, going into the product innovation area.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so real quickly, Sara, your answer, then I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think we may have a couple of questions that we can take from the audience before we all get to indulge in some wine. So,
Yes,
Sara?
well, we can go ahead to the audience, it's okay. Because it's hard for me to be short. We
Let me
noticed
ask this.
Okay.
I think this is something that you wanted to get to.
Right.
And I'd like for each of you to
Yeah.
answer it briefly. At least.
Okay.
What skills do we want to impart to the audience that they will need in the future? Skills that perhaps they don't necessarily have today, but they're going to be critical to be successful tomorrow, in the future, for technology and other fields. Skills that are necessary.
I'm going to start because my core skill, the core thing, everything that I've done where I've made a difference has all started with listening. You have to practice listening, and you have to listen with intention. And I hate those words because they sound like they've come out of a book, but they're true. You have to listen, and you've got to really try to internalize what somebody's trying to tell you, and then you've got to think about what are the next steps. But listening is a skill that we need now, we will need tomorrow, we will need the day after, and it takes practice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To me, it is thinking out of the box. It's a skill that it is difficult to develop. I know I've struggled all the time thinking I'm still going in the old, same old. Just this ability to step out of it. How do I step out of the box and think differently? And just allow myself to think differently. I think, to me, this is an exceptionally important skill.
Thank you. Sara?
I think what's going to be needed, I think all jobs are going to change, and what there's going to be is, for instance, Salesforce. Anybody know Salesforce, right?
do.
Right, Salesforce. I think Salesforce bought Tableau today, somebody told me. But, right, but besides that is, I just saw an article from them, and they said, we're going to do blockchain. Anyone know about blockchain? Blockchain is basically, it was overhyped, but there is some technology in here that we're really trying to get the middleman out. And that technology, IBM has been big in that space, of course, Microsoft as well. And they said, what we're going to create is blockchain applications for non-programmers. That what's going to be is industry experts are now going to contribute to the programming. So I think there has to be a combined, that everybody was talking about, we need coders. What I think people need to do is hone in on your own expertise and then combine that with logic, combine that with looking at different ways to look at a problem. And I think that's going to be the future when you're thinking about any type of industry. I think it's going to be important.
Thank you. Blanca?
I believe things are changing so fast,
rapidly.
and you really don't know
Right.
what's going to happen. So I truly believe that there are things like resilience or flexibility
Yes.
to adapt to whatever
Yes.
there is.
Right.
That's one thing. Agility.
Yes.
There's no time that you can
Right,
lose.
right.
You have to move fast.
Right.
In Mexico, there's a saying that says when you go to a party, you don't know what music they're going to play, but you
Right.
can always decide how you dance
Right.
that music, right? And so that's the thing. You have to move fast. You have to be very agile.
Flexible.
Agility today is important, and certainly that flexibility, that adapting to whatever the environment, whatever the circumstances. If you want to succeed, you have to be
I just
flexible.
want to add one more, is I think in terms of leadership, is that we have to find how do you take the best out of everyone? And look at that individual, rather if I look at anyone here on the panel, what is your best? And try as a leader to really maximize that. Yeah. So you can be there, I think, among others, even when we think about Asperger or autistic, a lot of companies now are saying, hey, we can incorporate that whole group of people into our situation, into our place, and we can take the best. And I think that's why management should look at that rather than boxing everybody in. I look to you and I say, how can you contribute? Turn it around and say, how can you contribute best to our goal?
That's a great point. We often look at the requirements of the job.
Yes.
Try to force people in that
Right.
box. I had a manager once that was just really exceptional at doing just what Sara says. He was just like, we have to find exactly what your skill set that makes you so unique and so special and pull that out of you.
Right.
And as a result, our organization is the better for it.
Yes.
Yeah, no, actually, I completely agree. I would actually say two things. One is I think that we talked about our advice. That's us. One of the most important things that you need to know you. You need to know what energizes you. What's energize you, what's energize me, it's just going to be fundamentally different. You need to know what is your strength.
Right.
What is your strength be very different than mine.
Right.
And what you're going to, when you become a leader in your organization, when you're going to grow your leadership, it will be based on your strengths and what you're excited to do, what you're excited to tackle. And those are going to be different things. So know yourself is one of the most important things that you should all do. And then on top of that, I would say just be proactive. Be proactive at learning new things, talking about how fast everything's changing. You know, really think through what are the new technology trends, what are the things you need to go, the next set of things to go learn. Go proactive, make those connections. So you have people to go tap into when you need to have a learning conversation. Be proactive about taking on challenges at work. When there, things come in, don't just, like I think people love to say, just don't talk about, don't just raise the problem, right? Give a solution. And I would actually add one more, and actually do something about it. Be proactive and do something about it to actually address, try one of the solutions, see if it actually works. Sometimes surprisingly, the solution doesn't work. So be proactive and really think about, don't just do what your manager asks of you. Think about what difference you have made, you have initiated and done differently. That makes an impact with your team members, with your company.
Okay. Blanca, you went, right?
No, probably the other one that I was going to say, it's how strong, how passionate you feel about something, because that's the best way to succeed. If you truly believe in what you're pursuing, it might be called self-determination or passion or whatever, but it is important. You're not going to succeed in this world if you are not really embracing what is ahead of you and you don't feel passionate about it. Right, but it's more importantly the agility and the flexibility, the skills that I think are going to be needed.
Excellent, excellent. So do we have a couple of questions from the audience, or we just want to drink?
There's both. Both. They can have a drink also.
I have to have some people help me because I can't, with the lights, I can't see. Do we have one back here? Thank you.
So taking mine.
And then we'll come over here.
So in the wake of the Me Too movement, what are your organizations doing to keep women, because there are women here, and what are your organizations doing to keep women safe in the workplace?
Well, I'm going to talk about our company. As I mentioned before, more than 45% of women are women. I mean, 45% women are women. I mean, 45% are women. But I have to say that this is a completely different environment. Yeah. Our culture in Latin America, and being born in Latin America, no matter if you're in India or in China, we hug, we kiss, and it's so easy that you can get confused by that. I remember the first time I went to India, and I tried to kiss them because that's the way we do it. And they were like, the arm like that. And after, in my second trip, I would say, let me make this clear. This is not sexual harassment. This is the way that we, in a way, hug and kiss, and that's the way we get to know each other. But what we have, it's, because the Me Too movement, it's there, we do have a very strong ethics code there, and you can get into and you can report whoever you want to. And believe me, we have been we're very, very strong in that. And no matter the rank, the level, they can be VPs, they can even be CEOs of certain regions, and we take it seriously. But you have to do that, no matter the level, because sometimes you are concerned when you had a report that someone that probably reports directly to you that they got something, a warning. And but if you want to make this happen, or if you want them, for women to feel safe, you have to take very seriously whatever they report.
Yeah, and I know quickly before I hand it over, I mean, at Western Digital, we take that very, very seriously, and all of our employees have to go through training, sexual harassment training, workplace violence training, so that there's a real emphasis placed on.
And one thing that it's important, and I sometimes it works the other way. We have found that in some cases, it's because they are mad because they didn't get that promotion or whatever. They might report something that it was not. I mean, it was not precise the way that they presented that. So you have to be very conscious of that. You have to respect and take it seriously, but also do not take for granted everything they said. Right. You have to go.
So Julia, real quick, and then Sara.
Yeah, let me add a point. So I think that all of the big corporations are doing, lots of training on managers. We have, hotline set up. People can report incident or investigation. I think that's almost standard. I will share a conversation that our Brad Smith, who leads our CELA, our corporate affairs, are starting having a conversation because there is a systemic issue across the industry. What we mean by that is today, let's say Microsoft fires someone because there's real sexual harassment issues. That person tomorrow can get hired in any of other companies immediately because no company today will ever report that internal investigation in any of the job reports.
Yeah.
So that is a systemic industry-wide issue. So I think that we're having that conversation in our corporate affairs about working with other companies about what to do to actually, and then what is the right thing to do. And it's a very complex, as you can imagine, very complex legal kind of issues. But I'm just saying that absolutely more should be done. And some of the conversation is starting, which I see that as progress. But I think that there are absolutely more can be done.
I just want to convey to you, it's not a fear, but to be in mind that this can also be like a backlash of men saying, well, I won't invite women to my office for discussions, or they won't go out on the outings with me because I don't want to be blamed for sexual harassment, and it can be used as an excuse, biased or unbiased. So that they're not going to be included as much because they're a fear, if I go with them on a business trip or go with them on an airline, then I may take another colleague because if I take Julia, then it's going to be a problem. I don't want to be said that. So you have to find that line. Women need to be protected, but women also need to be part of the organization, and I don't want them to be isolated from that because of that fear.
Great.
So how do you do that?
All right, we had a question over here. Yep.
Hi. Okay, so my question is mostly around the unconscious bias. So there are different opinions and how maybe you would respond to that on the panel right now. But I'm just kind of wondering, when is it appropriate, maybe if you have any techniques or tools of how to make the unconscious bias conscious within, the organization, men, women, everybody.
Yeah, so I will jump in since I mentioned more unconscious bias. So first of all, I will say there are a couple of things that we're doing within Microsoft. One is that there's a corporate-wide unconscious bias training, and then the goal of that is to get everyone to become aware of all humans. Every human actually has a different set of unconscious bias, and that is actually biological. That's what causes us to, evolution give it to us, and that's how we make snap decisions. But at the same time, in some of these work environment, it's actually not helping. So that is one of the corporate-wide, trainings. The other thing that we're starting to look into is that we have a set of what we call allies skills workshop. And the notion of an ally is that anyone can be anyone's ally in a situational sense. So hypothetically, for example, you could have a team. You could have a black woman engineer who's actually a senior member of the team. And then you could have a young white man who just joined as a college hire in the team. So when the team is having a conversation about design, you can envision a possibility where a new hire's opinion was not heard. And that new person might be cut off in conversations, and that kind of thing happen. So in this particular case, the senior person in the room, being the black woman engineer, could be the ally for this young white male to say, hey, everyone stop giving him a chance to speak. That's an act of ally. But then in a different social environment, etc., very commonly when you have a man and a woman showing up together to see customers, you will see the customers always direct a question at the men. We have all experienced that. In this particular case, maybe this young man will say, oh, it turned out that this black woman is the expert in this area. You should ask her the question. So you can see how the allies is very flexible. What we're trying to do is to take a set of very common situations that we run into at the corporate environment, and basically put the questions up for discussion. So for to just create awareness of these situations happens. Second, give people practice about when this situation happens, how would you be a good ally to help your colleagues out in those situations? And that kind of practice helps strengthen the kind of theoretical and conscious bias training.
It's what I call, having courageous conversations
Right.
about it. Mm-hmm. Too often, I think what happens in organizations is they do the awareness training,
And what does that really
And
mean?
they stop there. They
What is that
understand, okay,
awareness?
I have unconscious bias, but then there's never the next step taken.
Yes.
To understand, so what do I do next? How do I get beyond
Right.
that? And I think one of the ways you get beyond that is having those open, honest, difficult, and courageous conversations so people work through the biases. that they
And
have.
who initiates that, Roger?
and
And I'm just asking you.
Well, but certainly they have to be, because these can be difficult conversations, they have to be professionally, I would say, professionally facilitated conversations, so that you can actually, so otherwise you can have contentious situations there in the workplace that might be difficult to manage
So
through.
slightly, we disagree slightly because what we hear is that a lot of time the conversation just happens spontaneously. So for example, I will tell you, these are real conversations people have raised to me, right? It will be, you know, we're celebrating a promotion of, you know, to a very senior level. And then there's a group of people saying, oh yeah, look at all these people got promoted. And then one of the guy would talk to the women to say, oh, you will be the next one who get promoted because you're a woman. Like, they don't really necessarily mean bad things, but the impact of what they said is very harmful.
Right.
So, you know, so in these situations, if there's other people around, can step in and just say, I don't think that's an appropriate thing to say. Just something like that, I think would actually just raise awareness and cause people to say, oh yeah, like on the moment. I think that once you kind of organize a professional facilitator, it feels
raises
like
the stakes.
Yeah, it kind of escalates the situation. So I think that what this is all experiment, I would say. What
Right.
we're trying to do is get people, if you truly have an environment that people feels, you know, is inclusive,
Right.
is
That's the
you
key.
belong, then you're kind of a little bit more, hopefully you're more comfortable
Yep.
to say those things. You know, it's kind of like, you know, at home, right? If you could to a family member, you're like, ooh, that's not a nice thing to say. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
You're comfortable to say something like that to your family members. We're hoping that in a corporate environment, you know, when the inclusion culture is more there, the team members are more willing to say something like that to help each other out.
Right.
And everyone should treat that as a learning moment versus being criticized.
And it might be a little bit naive, but I do believe, right, we call it unconscious bias for a reason. It's not done with malicious intent.
Absolutely not.
And that is really critical
education.
because when you take that into account, when you say this really, they weren't trying to be hurtful. They might have been silly, they might have been dumb, but you know, go back to the family. How often have you had to say to members of your family, that really wasn't the right thing to say? You know, you could have said it this way and it wouldn't have been hurtful. And I'm not saying that work necessarily is family, but you need to have that level of trust because that level of trust goes to the inclusion that we were talking about earlier. It goes to the ability to innovate. It goes to the ability for every one of us to become who we are. And so if I approach this as this is not done with malicious intent, this was done just because somebody, slip of the tongue, didn't think about it, it means that you get to go and have that honest conversation that says, hey, you know, probably not a really good idea to joke about, you know, this not being good for somebody who's colorblind because I'm colorblind. and by the way, and this is actually a real example that I've seen because I've got a close colleague who is colorblind. When we kind of worked through, and he has a high horse about being colorblind, so, you know, we have to kind of get him down off of that. But what we've been able to do by accommodating that and getting rid of these biases, we now present data in ways that is far more meaningful than we ever would have before if we hadn't stopped to think about what does it mean if I'm worrying about somebody who's colorblind. And it all started because of somebody's unconscious bias, that there was a safe space for somebody to go and then say, not cool. And then from there, we could take it into cool to, hey, really helpful. That's a critical part of having a safe environment, and that's something that we all need to be striving to, and we need to be assuming is there.
Right.
I would just add one last point. As leaders, it's so important for us to lead with examples, to show that we're human, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, but you know,
To
for
admit
all
it.
the managers here, for you to share like, oh yeah, I made that mistake to your team members, you're actually creating a safe environment for people to learn.
Okay. So thank you very much.